So let's talk about the Jeffrey Epstein case. What if this story wasn't just about one monstrous man? What if it's really about a deep, dark flaw in the very way our society is structured? Today, we're going to look at this whole thing not as a one-off event, but as a kind of terrifying blueprint, a repeating pattern that shows how immense power can hide the absolute worst crimes imaginable. And that really brings us to the biggest question of all, doesn't it? How is it even possible for the worst kinds of abuse to go on for decades, sometimes right out in the open? Well, the answer isn't just about one evil person. It's about the systems of power that, enable them and protect them.
To really get our heads around that, let's start small. We're going to look at an individual predator, and then his shocking mirror image from across the ocean. Okay, just look at this. This slide lays out the playbook, and it is chilling how similar it is. You've got two men on two different continents. One's an American financier, the other's this beloved British TV host. But they both did the same thing. They built these legitimate public careers that gave them access to children, and both of them were shielded by this powerful network of friends in politics, finance, and the media. It's the exact same strategy.
So what does that actually mean? Well, it means their fame and their connections became a kind of invisibility cloak. They were seen as so important, so untouchable, that the entire system around them, I'm talking law enforcement, the media, their own friends, they just chose to look away from warning signs that were frankly impossible to miss.
All right, so we've seen the lone predator. Now let's zoom out a bit and see how an entire industry can become a shield for this kind of abuse. And here we go again. You can see how both of these men use the exact same tools of power. It all starts with abusing a power imbalance, right? They used incredible amounts of money, they had teams of high-powered lawyers, and they used these secret legal settlements to build a culture of fear that just silenced their victims. Now, their specific crimes were different, sure, but the mechanism of control, it was identical.
And this, right here, this is the key. The system wasn't quiet because people weren't getting hurt. It was quiet because it was designed from the ground up to make victims feel that if they spoke up, it would cost them everything. Their careers, their reputations, their entire futures. The price of telling the truth was made impossibly high.
So we've gone from an individual to an entire industry. Now, let's look at what happens when a massive global institution is the one doing the hiding.
And I mean, you know the drill by now. It's the same tragic pattern all over again. Decades and decades of abuse. Victims who are disbelieved, who are blamed, or even threatened into silence. And an organization that uses its own internal rules to basically sidestep the law. It doesn't matter if it was Epstein's personal network or the church's global hierarchy. The goal was exactly the same: protect the institution no matter what.
You know, this reveals a really disturbing truth. This kind of cover-up, it isn't an accident. It's a feature, not a bug. When protecting the image of the institution becomes more important than protecting the actual human beings inside it, abuse isn't just a crime anymore. It becomes part of the culture.
Okay, let's take our final zoom out. This is the biggest scale of all. That fragile, crucial trust between us, the citizens, and the state itself.
What's so fascinating here is how these stories always seem to begin. They start as these whispers, right? Things that are really easy for the mainstream to just dismiss as wild conspiracy theories. But then, piece by piece, the evidence starts to come out, and it proves that the authorities were hiding the truth, they were destroying records, they were dodging accountability. This is exactly how public trust in our institutions dies. And this is exactly why so many people are skeptical, It's not irrational. It's because history is just filled with proven, documented examples of authorities at the very highest levels covering up the truth. That kind of distrust, it's been earned.
So after looking at all these patterns, the predator, the industry, the institution, and the state, we have to ask the final question. What makes the Epstein case this uniquely dangerous, perfect storm?
It's the rare and absolutely terrifying combination of these three things all happening at the same time. First, you have the most heinous crimes you can imagine. Second, you have a global network connecting the wealthiest and most powerful people on the entire planet. And then third, the one person at the center of it all dies before he can ever be fully cross-examined in a court of law.
And this is why this case leaves such a deep, deep wound. We're left with a story that has no ending. Justice can never be fully served. The complete truth can never really be verified. And because of that, this permanent cloud of suspicion and doubt is just going to hang over this case forever. So, what's the common thread that connects all of these scandals we've talked about? It really comes down to this. The system fails when its priorities are completely backwards. It fails when it values power more than justice, when it values reputation more than victims, and when it values the appearance of stability more than the messy, difficult truth.
So, let's just be crystal clear about the final takeaway from all of this, the one thing to really remember. Jeffrey Epstein was not some bizarre, once-in-a-lifetime exception to the rule.
He's a symptom. He's a symptom of a disease that has existed for centuries. He is just a modern, super-concentrated example of what happens when power is allowed to operate in the shadows, with absolutely no accountability. And that leaves us with one final, urgent question. What are we going to do to finally break this pattern?